crafty friends, it's Jess from jesscrafts.com, and today I have a card sharing with you another way to use your alcohol inks. In some ways it's quite similar to the other things that I was doing with alcohol inks in making a background, but I wanted to show you how you can easily build a scene with those same colors, or sorry, the same technique by adding different colors. So what I'm going to do is I have the ink blending tool from Ranger, and it has a piece of felt on it. So you might be familiar with using this with your distress inks, but then you put a foam pad on it. But here I'm using felt because that's what you need for the alcohol inks. And I'm going to use it to apply the alcohol inks. So I want to create a beach scene. I want to create a sunset, an ocean, and sand all on my background. And so I'm going to add color similar to what you might do if you were adding distressing. You would, place down one color and then the next, and you could create a little bit of a scene there. So I want my water in the center, and so I am using two different blues since I happen to have two different ones. Of course you could do it with just one color, but I like the little bit of interest it adds. And so I just put a few dots of each blue onto the felt pad, and then I start tapping and swirling the felt pad onto the paper. You could instead just drag it straight across the paper, but that's going to create a little bit different look. I want it to kind of look like the water's moving a little bit, and so that's why I kind of prefer this dab and swirl motion. However, I'll use the pulling it straight across motion to create a different look. What's interesting about the alcohol inks is the way that you apply them to the paper matters. They are not as blendable as a lot of other mediums because of the way they absorb into the paper. So you will get definite spots of one color or the other, particularly if you're doing that dab motion. And so to add a little bit more interest at the end and to create more distinct areas of color, I did just dab my tool across as opposed to doing the sweeping motion, because that sweeping motion is going to get you more of like a solid line of color. So if you just wanted a solid strip of blue, you could put a few dabs of blue across the felt and swipe it across your paper, and you can get that solid look that way, but they do very much layer on top of each other. So it does take a little bit of getting used to. It's not quite the same as ink blending. Now for the sky, I wanted to create a look of yellow blended into orange and blended into red. And I found the easiest way to do that was to put them all on the same ink blending tool. So you see I took the yellow, put a few dots towards the bottom, then a few dots of orange and a few dots of red, and now I'm just going to pull straight across to create stripes. Oh, I'm sorry, I did actually do a little bit of moving, but here I'm trying to create more of the look of stripes. And so sorry, it's hard when you do these things a couple of days ago and then you're like trying to remember what did I do, and you do the voiceover. So you could pull straight across and create really clear stripes, but I guess I kind of wanted to keep it a little bit more consistent. So I kept the tool in that straight motion and turned it just very, very little bit as I moved it across the paper. So I kind of just like danced it across, moving it just a little bit as I went, because I did want the yellow to stay there, whereas if I twisted the whole tool, I would pull the red into the orange into the yellow. So it is a different motion than I used to create the center, because there I wanted the colors to kind of mix together. But here, since I don't want to pull the red into the orange, I don't want to move my tool nearly as much. I want to kind of keep it in that straight line. However, if you pulled that stripe straight across, as I thought perhaps I did with this technique, again, it would help if I put the card in front of me while I was doing the video, the voiceover, but it would create like a really distinct straight line between the yellow and orange. And the reason that you do that little bit of a dance motion is just so that it's not like a perfect straight line, and they seem a little more consistent. Now each time I change colors, I am changing to a new piece of felt. You can buy the little pieces of felt pre-cut to the size of this tool, or you can purchase felt and cut them yourself. It is not very expensive either way, but definitely a little bit cheaper to buy the felt yourself. But this felt feels a little bit different than some of the felt you might get at the store, so just kind of keep that in mind. And you don't have to use a new one every time. Once it's dry, it usually doesn't activate, so you can use the same one as long as it's in like similar color families. So like if I was going to do another thing with yellow, I could reuse the one I'm using for sand right now. I again am choosing 2 different colors because I have a pretty extensive collection of alcohol inks. I was able to get some at the Ranger warehouse sale, since I live in New Jersey where the warehouse is, and sometimes they open it up for a sale and you get some really good deals. So that's why I have so many. But if you had only a few options, you could just choose the one color. Like here, using the yellow you used in the sky for the sand would work out pretty well. I just wanted to have a slightly different tone, so I pulled in a brown with it. And as you can see, I did do a swipe motion across, and it gave you more of those straight lines. But again, I'm just trying to keep everything somewhat similar, so I am doing a little bit of a dab motion as well. And I come back in at the end and just do the dab. So when you dab alcohol ink on, it's going to just create spots in the places that you put the drops on the felt, and it's not going to create a solid area because you're putting drops of ink on as opposed to covering the whole felt pad with ink. And now I am ready to do my stamping. Last year I met the owner of Seaside Stampin Ink, and I was working with him at a stamp show demoing some of the stamps. It was a really fun experience, and I think that they have some really unique stamps. What I particularly like is their scene building stamps, and so these are some stamps from that set where you can build a whole beach scene. And they have some different ways that they package it up. Like you can purchase them separately if you only like one component, but they kind of sell stamps that work well together. And so what I'm doing here is using their water stamp, and it basically adds the texture of water on top of a background. So I already had some interest and variation with the way that I did the alcohol inks because I used 2 different colors and I did that dab and swirl motion. But I wanted to, kind of emphasize that that was indeed water, and so I'm using this water or waves stamp, and I'm just stamping it in Memento dye ink, and I'm working on gloss paper. That was important to have mentioned earlier. Because this is alcohol ink, which works with non-porous surfaces, you're going to want a gloss paper, and this gloss paper is also from Seaside Stampin Ink. Now you noticed I dropped my stamp onto my background, which was like really just like, made my heart stop for a second because I'm like, oh no, I mean, I'd made 2, so I knew I could still finish my card, but I was like, oh gosh, I just ruined this whole piece. However, because it's gloss paper, it does take the dye ink a little bit of time to dry on it, and so since I was able to wipe it right away with a clean paper towel, I was able to get off most of that blue ink, and it's a lot less noticeable now. And then I'm going to stamp over it, so I'm going to cover up a good amount of that blue ink and save the day. So a lot of people say, like, when you're crafting, it's not a mistake, it's an opportunity for embellishment. And that's kind of what I did. I was like, well, I know where my grass is going to go now. It's going to cover that blue splotch that I made. So it did a pretty effective job of that. So one of the other stamps in the set are these like little dunes with the seagrass, and what I like about these is you don't have to color them in. The way that they design the stamps is you can just do a lot of colored ink stamping, and I don't always use my colored inks enough, and so it's fun to pull them out and let them create the scene and not have to add all the details in myself. So this time I took archival ink. So the Memento ink works well, the Ranger archival works well. Distress ink is a little, it doesn't work as well on the gloss paper, however, because it's water, has the water reactivity, but I don't usually use distress ink for stamping because it's not the most consistent ink in general. And so once I had the scene stamped, I was ready to add a sentiment. I've noticed that these are rubber cling stamps. Usually I use clear, and I will say that I notice a difference between clear stamps and rubber cling stamps, and that it's easier to get a good impression with rubber stamps. But I like clear stamps because I can really tell where I'm stamping, and it's just a personal preference. Most of the stamp companies that I really love make clear stamps, and clear stamps are a little bit cheaper. So, however, rubber stamps do have really nice quality, and when you want to stamp them in your MISTI, what you need to do is take out that black foam pad that is the bottom of your MISTI. Take out the grid mat, the foam pad, take out everything. Then you can put a rubber cling stamp on the door and stamp the same way you always would with the MISTI. So I pulled out the MISTI tool so that my sentiment would be perfect, because sometimes when you're stamping on gloss paper, the paper can slip a little bit. But that is it for my card today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you are interested in more crafting and card tutorials, be sure to subscribe to my channel. I'm going to leave you links to the products in the video description below. And thank you for taking the time to watch my video and leave comments. I really appreciate that. Have an awesome day. Bye.